Kedoshim is one of the most famous chapters in Tanakh. It's a short haftorah, but there's a lot to say about it. Now, the understanding of the entire parsha of Kedoshim is based upon the simple fact, as recited in the first pasuk, V'yisem li kedoshim ki kadosh ani Hashem lakeichem. You shall be holy, you shall be a special people, because the Rabbanu Shalom, who is the essence of holiness, so to speak, is the Lord your God, and He has brought you forth in the world for that purpose. And that simple, almost simplistic view of what the Jewish people are is the basis for everything else that occurs in the Torah. Is that you will be a special people unto me. In your behavior, in your attitude, in your rituals, in your uniqueness, special people, different. Now, to the extent that the Jewish people do not live up to that goal, to the extent that they fall into the trap which the Tanakh describes as Kechol HaGoyim Beis Yisrael, that the household of Israel is like all the other nations of the world. So to that extent does God remove His mantle of protection, His mantle of uniqueness from the Jewish people, and they become like the Goyim. And in fact, they become worse than the Goyim. And that, therefore, the test of the Jewish people is simply whether or not they live up to this challenge of being kedoshim. Rashi states it very clearly at the end of kedoshim that if you are a holy people, then you're my people, and if you're not a holy people, then you're worse than Nebuchadnezzar and his group and his gang. And we see that unfortunately when the Jewish people are not very holy, so then they run a very good mafia, then they're involved in everything, then they are no better than anyone else. Not only no better, their talents make them worse. So that's the backdrop to this haftorah, and this haftorah is only 9 psukim long. It's the shortest haftorah. It's the shortest haftorah in the Chumash, and because of that, it's much in demand for bar mitzvah parshas. But the 9 psukim are really, each and every one of them is a very telling and cogent and strong expression regarding the Jewish people and regarding our relationship to Rabbanu Shalom. The Navi Amos is one of the most powerful of all the Nevi'im. The Talmud tells us that Amos was a contemporary of the Navi Hosea and the Navi Micha and the Navi Yeshayahu. In your Chumashim, you'll probably find it as being printed as Achremos, the Haftorah of Achremos, but the custom of Ashkenazic Jewry is to read it for Kedoshim. So the Navi Amos was a shepherd. The Navi Amos lived in the northern kingdom of Israel with the 10 tribes, and he is present at the time of the destruction of the 10 tribes of Israel. He is an eyewitness who witnesses the destruction of the northern kingdom of the 10 tribes of Israel by the king Sancheriv and the Assyrian army. And this is in reality a prophecy regarding that destruction. But because of its universal and eternal quality, the prophecy is not limited to that time nor that set of circumstances, but it speaks to every generation, and I think it speaks especially to our generation. Now, the nature of the Navi Amos is that his poetry is not only beautiful, but his poetry lends itself to many different interpretations. So we will see that there are variant opinions among the commentators how to treat these psukim, how we shall interpret them. So I'll try and give you a few viewpoints on every pasuk. Halo ki v'nei chushim atem li b'nei Yisrael nu'um Hashem. Halo is like, behold, let's say the truth, the Navi says. Let's not mince any words. Let's say the truth. Ki v'nei chushim atem li b'nei Yisrael. You, the children of Israel, are to me like the children of the Kushim. Now, where is Kush? One of the famous discussions in the Talmud. There's a Kush called Ethiopia, but there's also a place in the world, and still called Kush today, in Afghanistan. It's called, the Kush of Hindustan. And it's on the Pakistani-Afghanistan border. It's where the war is going on between Russia and the Afghan rebels. And that's called Kush. You can look it up on your map, Kush. So the Talmud says, for instance, it says in the book of Esther, there's some homes for sale there. The Talmud says Talmud says in the book of Esther that Mehodu vad Kush, that Achashverosh reigned from Hodu, from India till Kush. So one opinion is from India till Ethiopia, meaning one end of the world till the other. The other opinion is Hodu and Kush are next door countries. And the Talmud means to say, since the world is round, he ruled the whole world. But if you want to say that you rule the whole world, so then like you rule from California to Nevada. So if you're going east, you don't rule much. But if you're going west, you rule the whole world. So that's the expression, Mehodu vad Kush, from India till the Kush of Afghanistan, of Hindustan. So it's not clear to us what the word Kush here means, whom it describes. But I'm going to give you a number of variant interpretations. No, so the word Kushi, we'll get to that. The word Kushi that we use to describe a black person is because Ethiopians were black. But with that, I didn't say that. He didn't mean that because I haven't interviewed him yet. But I don't know. I mean, the Meforshim, that we will see that the Pshat and the Pasuk can certainly be, the explanation of Pasuk can certainly be clear without using Afghanistan or saying black or referring to that. We'll see that right now. The Jewish people are special, right? And Jewish people know they're special because they know they're special, so they think they can do whatever they want. He's the principal's son, right? He's the rabbi's son. He can get away with anything. And that's how the Jewish people feel. That is certainly how they felt during the time of the first temple. The Talmud tells us that the Jewish people, when they worshipped idols, didn't really mean to worship idols. They were interested in the side benefits that came with it. Sexual license, having a good time, all of the side benefits of paganism. They never really believed in idols. But why did they do it? Weren't they afraid of retribution? They figured nothing's going to happen to them because God has too much invested. They're known in the world as God's people, and Jerusalem is God's city, and the temple is God's building. What's God going to do? He's stuck. And therefore, they behaved with impunity. Until, in the words of the rabbis, until the destruction happened, it never was a real option in their mind that God would destroy Jerusalem and the temple and send them into exile. Just as, unfortunately, every few hundred years in Jewish history, it's not a real option to us how precarious and dangerous our situation is and that we can be destroyed until it happens. And we almost are destroyed, then it becomes real for a short period of time. And then again it recedes. And the lesson somehow evaporates. So the interpretation here would be, let's do interpretation number one. God says, you are to me, you children of Israel are no different to me than the children of Cush. You're subject to the same laws and rules of history. Cush got destroyed, was conquered by Sancheriv, it got swept away, and that's going to happen to you. Don't think that I'm going to be there to protect you. Don't think it can't happen. You are to me only as the children of Cush are to me, and apparently the children of Cush were always conquered. It was not one of the strong countries in the world. Second interpretation, based on that same thought, Cush in the time of the Navi, at least for Jews who lived in Israel, that was the end of the world. Whether we say it's Ethiopia, whether we say it's Afghanistan, it was the end of the world. It was the next year we're going to go there for Pesach place. It was the end of the world. So if God wants to speak in disdain, I mean, we would say, I don't know how, we wouldn't say anything today because it's not nice to demean anyone, but we would say, you're as important to me as Fiji or Sri Lanka or other places that to us really don't occupy page one. They're not very important to us. So God in effect is saying, you're minor league. You guys think, that I have nothing to do but worry all day about you, and what you do constricts me and limits me. You're to me like, who are you? You're like the Fijians. You're like, the nomadic tribes at the end of the world. So you don't think that I care about them, right? Because they're not the central fulcrum of history. They're not the main focal point. They're not the ones that decide history. The future of civilization, without demeaning anybody, is not decided by the natives of New Guinea. It may be decided by the United States, it may be decided by Europe, it may be decided by Russia, it may be decided by Israel, there are places in the world where history will be made. But that's not the place. The Eskimos and the Barren Islands and the Aleutians, it's nice to know that they're there. It's a National Geographic special. But that's not That's not the world. That's not civilization. That's not the story of man. They are peripheral to it. So the Jewish people see themselves as the center of the story, as we are, and everything depends upon us, and Akol B'Shvil Yisrael, everything goes, oh, the Jews, right? So God says to them, listen, buddy, if you behave yourself, and you're a holy people, so then you're right, you are special. You want to behave like the Goyim, you want to behave like the Canaanites, you want to behave like the Phoenicians, so then you are to me like the Fijis. I don't care what happens to you. Then the natural laws of history and of politics and of military might will take over, and you're gone. You're out the window. Third interpretation. Kivnei Kushim. The word Kushi in Hebrew means black, as I mentioned before, because the Ethiopians were black. And we find that the Navi Yirmiyah says, Ayapo Kushi Oro. Can a black person change his skin to be white? Because of that, and even though the blacks at that time probably were as numerous as the whites, again, in terms of civilization, in terms of history, they did not play a central role. The future of mankind was never carved out in Central Africa. And therefore, the people who lived in the Fertile Crescent, the people that lived around the Mediterranean, the home of birthplace of civilization, spoke about the blacks as being different, even though the whites are different also, or the reds or the yellows or anybody is different. But because they felt that they were history and that the blacks were not, so therefore the blacks were different. So in Hebrew, a strange thing happened, that if you wanted to say about someone that that person was unique, and then if you wanted to say that that person was unique in a positive sense, then you called the person a Kushi. In the Talmud, that's almost Lashon Sagi Nohar, the Talmud says. Many times in the Talmud we use opposite meanings. So if you want to say that, for instance, in the Torah says that Moshe married Isha Kushis. So if you'll take a look at some of the great art in the world, it always shows our ancestress Tzipporah as being a black woman. But that's not at all what occurred. The word Kushis means a very beautiful woman. And that was the word that was used in Hebrew. When you wanted to say that someone was extraordinarily beautiful, so that was the word that was used because of the uniqueness. Just as black is unique from white, so the beautiful person from the average-looking person. So that was the word. The word Kushi has that connotation. It's a very positive connotation because of the backwards use of the word. So God said, "Alo kivnei kushiyah matem li bnei Yisrael." You are a special people. What do you compare yourselves to these people? How do you compare yourself to the rest of the world? How do you behave as those other nations behave? You are a special, unique, you're beautiful people. So how do you compare, how do you defile yourself? How do you turn around and say, well, look, the Canaanites are doing it, the Phoenicians are doing it, the Assyrians are doing it, everybody's doing it. What's wrong? Why shouldn't I do it? So that interpretation is that this is a direct confrontation with the Jewish people in which God says to them, I demand that you live up to your unique status. There's a fourth interpretation. I mean, there are many more than this, but again, in the study of Tanakh and in the study of Hebrew words generally in the Bible, one has to realize that it is not like any other study. The word in any other language has one meaning at a time. For instance, in English, if I use the word might, M-I-G-H-T, and if I say to you, I might go to the store tomorrow, so that the word might then has the connotation of meaning maybe. But if I tell you might is right, so then the word might has a completely different connotation. Might there means strength. And if you don't spell correctly, might can also mean a little, it can mean an insect. I mean, the word has many, many uses. But in English, it means one of those meanings at any given time. It cannot mean strength and maybe at the same time. That's not true in Hebrew. In Hebrew, in Tanakh, the word can mean all of its possible synonyms at the same time. And in fact, you have to appreciate what all the synonyms are in order to understand really what the Navi is saying. An example. Elokim pokod yifkod eschem. The word pokod in Hebrew means to count, it means to remember, it means to visit, it means to punish, it means to reward. It means to make erect. It means it means a bailment, a trustee. It means all of those meanings at the very same time. If you want to understand what God will do to the Jewish people, he will count us and he'll remember us and he treats us as a bailment and he makes us erect and he visits us and he punishes us and he rewards us. It means all of that at the very same instant. And if you don't understand that, then you miss the whole nuance of what the pasuk means. That's what makes it so difficult to study, and that's why it's such a difficult language to translate, Art Scroll notwithstanding. It doesn't translate well into any other language because you always lose the nuance. And 90% of Tanakh is nuance. If we had a video, you could see the Navi, make the motion, then you'd really understand what he's talking about. And the nuance is hard to carry through. That's why one should know Hebrew, A, and B, even when one knows Hebrew, one has to realize that all the possible interpretations of the verse, it's not that Rashi is correct and the Radak was incorrect. Rashi's correct, the Radak is correct, all the interpretations are correct, because the pasuk means it all. That's part of the power of prophecy, that it can have so many different meanings. So here the fourth interpretation, Alok ibnei kushim atem li bnei Yisrael num Hashem. So the word here, kushim, means beloved. You're beloved to me. And again, that's a challenge, because if God is interested to us and we have a special relationship, etc., then he's going to hold us to a special standard. He's not going to allow us, and that's the history of the Jewish people. God does not allow us to slip away. We try, but we never get away. Sometimes we are reminded positively, sometimes, God forbid, we are reminded negatively, but we are always reminded of our special characteristic. I saw, 5 years ago, I was in Israel, so I was at my uncle's house in Rehovot. So a man came to visit my uncle. And my uncle, he's happy to show off his American nephew. So he tells the man, he says, my nephew, he's a rabbi, he's in New York, in Muncie. He says, where's Muncie? Yeah, what do you mean, where's Muncie? So he says, I have a son that lives also in New York. I said, where in New York? He says he lives in New City. Oh, so he's a landsman, right? New City. 10 minutes. He says, but he's irreligious. He went and he's a Yored. He left the country. He says, I don't even know what he's doing there. Okay, yes, I forget about the story. 4 years ago, I'm in the yeshiva one afternoon. We're in the old building yet. And this man comes walking in with his son and a grandson. And he says, you remember me? He said, I met you by your uncle in Rehovot. I figured, he wants a donation. Otherwise, why did he come to see me? My usual charitable view of the Jewish people. And he starts talking to me, and his son is looking around at the boys and the yeshiva and his grandson. And, and obviously he doesn't know how to wear a yarmulke. He wears the kippah on top of his head like a peaked cap. And we talked and fine, and it was just a social visit. He came to get regards. So on the way out, I said to the grandson, must have been 6, 7 years old, I said to him, I told Lech Bet Sefer. He said, oh yeah, he's going to school. Where's he going? He's going to the public school. I said, Bet Sefer Yehudi? Yeah, no. So I told him, I said, you're going to have to become bar mitzvah. You should tell your father and mother, they should send you to... Okay, Shlach lach mechal pnei amoyim. Okay. I go back to Israel to see my uncle again. When I come there, so my uncle has always, people in Rehovot who are dying to see me. So I'm there, so my aunt calls this guy up, and the guy comes running, and he says, you give regards to my son and everything, he gives me the phone number. So I come back, and I call up the son, and I just mentioned to him, I said, what's doing with your boy? So he says, we joined the Reform Temple in New City, Bet Shalom there. Oh, from Madrega? Okay, he's on the way. I didn't hear again, nothing. Last week, the father and the son and the grandson come to see me. Yeah, he's here again. He said he took the cab to the old place, and I wasn't there, and Vision had sent him over here, And he comes here, and he comes walking in and everything. And the kid now is about 12 years old already. 11 and a half, 12 years old. The kid's wearing already a kippah through guy. He's normal. The kid tells me he's going on a shire. They still live in a new city or somewhere, you know. The kid's going to Ashar. So, and the grandfather, you know, is just... So he starts talking to him, you know, so the only thing the boy saw naturally in the yeshiva was that there's a gym, right? So he sees the guys are playing ball, etc. So on the way out, you know, so I made a joke with him. I said, you know, good. I said, you know, you're going to be bar mitzvah. He's finishing 6th grade, I think, in Ashar, whatever. I said, you know, he graduated 8th grade, so you'll have to, you know, you go to yeshiva high school. Do something. So the father says, Beta, 100%. You know. Certainly he's going to go up there. I wouldn't send him to public school, you know, and he gives me a whole speech about public school and the samim and the drugs and this, maybe you're going to send him only to a Jewish place, hanging out here. So when they left, so I mean, the story is absolute. It's an insane story, right? Of which there probably are another 1,000 like it, and then there's 1,000 the other way, that, you know, where nothing happens. But here, this guy ran to New City. If he would have stayed inside, the irony is, I'm going to tell my uncle, God willing, this summer, and see him in Rehovot, I'm going to tell him that if he would have stayed in Rehovot, so he would be a goy gomer. He would be, who knows, you know, shalom achshav, who knows what would be with him, right? He'd be hanging around with the drugs, right? So he ran away to New City, right? And he's going to end up with a kid that has a chance, at least, to be a shomer mitzvahs and to be, you know, so the father's going to win after all. Because the Jewish people are special. And so Rebbeinu Shalom has many ways of dealing with special. And many times he deals with it in such a way that the person doesn't even realize it's happening to him. So that's what God says here. That's the interpretation of this verse. Halois Yisrael, haleisi meretz Mitzrayim. I brought the Jewish people out of the land of Egypt. So again, the simple explanation is I brought you out for a purpose. I didn't bring you out to be the Lebanese or to be like Zanzibar or anybody else in the world. I took you forth in the land of Egypt to your purpose. If you don't want to fulfill my purpose, then uplishti mekaftor varom mikir. You're not the only people that came out, right? The Philistines came to Israel from Kaftor, from Cyprus, because that was well known in the ancient world. The Philistines originally come from the island of Cyprus. And they emigrated. They came by boat. At the same time that Avram Avinu came to the country, the Philistines came to the country, and they lived on the seacoast, and they were there for a very long time, 700-800 years. And then they disappeared. So God says the same thing can happen to you, right? The Philistines came from Cyprus, and they were there in the country for 700-800 years. They had a big country and a big empire, and today the only Philistines you can find today are in Greenwich Village. No more Philistines. The Aram Mikir. Kir is also an island in the Mediterranean, one of the Greek islands, one of the Peloponnesian islands. And Aram, which is what we call today Syria, great and strong empire, was suddenly collapsed and was taken over by Ashur. They were gone. So he said Aram also, they came out of Kir and they were there for a long time and they were big and mighty and powerful and poof, goodbye. The British Empire. Spanish Empire. Look at all the empire. It's all gone. So God says, you know, you want to, that's your choice. I took you out of Egypt. I took you for a special purpose. You don't like my special purpose. You don't want to be like that. You want to be like the rest of the world? Good. Fine. This is your choice. Very, very, I don't know it's very pungent, the way the Navi puts it. I mean, he really leaves no room to squirm off the hook. And here the Navi makes such a statement, you know, it's frightening in its import, because he's the first Navi that does it. The Navi says there's a difference between a Jewish state and a Jewish government and the Jewish people. He said the Jewish people will survive. And there's no guarantee any Jewish state will survive. There's no guarantee any Jewish government will survive. None. You don't behave yourself, goodbye. Hinei Hashem Elokim b'mamlocha hachato. What a phrase. God's eyes, kaviyachol. God will turn. You know, the phrase God's eyes always means, you know, God looks at you. We would rather see that he doesn't look at you, right? It's like getting your file pulled at the IRS. You know, you'd rather, if they send you a notice that you owe them $2.50, you pay the $2.50. You don't ask them, to, you know, why. You don't ask for a $10 refund. You know, Just let it go. And that's the awesomeness of Yom Noraim as it's recorded in the Machzor and as recorded in the prayers of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippurim is Kavakoras Roe Edro Mavir Tzono Tachashifto, that everybody has to walk by singly. You know what Jim Baker said about the IRS? You know, he's $13 million short. $13 million is missing from there. And the government, the IRS, is looking for it. So Baker said, you know, the devil got in their computer, he said. So here the phrase, Einei Hashem Elokim, is that God's eyes are on you. Okay, God is looking at you. B'mamlocha hachatoa, that's the 10 northern tribes. In that sinful government, that stands against everything that is Jewish. V'shmadati osam al pnei adama, I will destroy it from the face of the earth, it will never rise again. But that's not the end of the Jewish people. Ephes, however. The word Ephes is also a great word in Hebrew. Ephes means however, Ephes means zero. It means all of that here. Kilo hashmeid ashmidas beis Yaakov num Hashem. The Jewish people will not be destroyed. The Jewish government will be destroyed. Oh yeah. The Jewish state will be destroyed. The state, the country, everything, all of that's going to happen, but not the Jewish people. So, as the Talmud says, you know, it's good news and good news, right? The Gemara always does that. The Gemara sees it, because in everything that the Navi says is always the combination of good news and bad news, which is true of life generally. There's very rarely anything in life that's good. If you listen to the economic reports, no matter which way the report comes out, you know, it's good for it and it's bad. It's good for this, it's bad for that. And it's that way in most of life. So, the Gemara says, for instance, that your children will ask you, Mo avodah zos lachem, what is Pesach about? So the Gemara says, bad news. You got a whole generation of Jews that doesn't know what Pesach's about. It's good news, because somebody's going to ask at least, what is Pesach about? So here also, it's bad news and good news. The bad news is that the government's going to be destroyed. The Jewish political entity is going to be brought under. But the good news is that the Jewish people will not be brought under. The Jewish people will survive. How will this work? The Navi said, well, how can it be that there'll be a Jewish people and there won't be a Jewish nation? There won't be a Jewish government? To us, it's no question, because after being almost 2,000 years in exile, we have, so to speak, become accustomed. We can understand how such a thing could happen. But here he's standing before the Jewish people ever went to exile. So they said, well, how can that be? So God says simply, Ki hinei anochi mitzaveh, I will command. V'haniosi b'chol hagoyim es beis Yisrael. Haniosi means I will shove through. I'll make them move. I will force them to move amongst all the nations of the world. The Jewish people will move among all the nations of the world. They will be wanderers. They will find no permanence. Kasher yinoa bakvora. You have to imagine a great sieve. We don't have these types of strainers or sieves, but the kvora was a sieve that they used to use to sift wheat or flour. So they would take it and shake it in the air. So the sieve has a strainer on top, and then it has a receptacle on the bottom, so that whatever gets through the strainer falls to the bottom, and that's the part that is used for the flour. That's the small pieces that we want to keep. So God says the Jewish people will go through a great sifter. That's the exile. The exile sifts and strains and separates. At the bottom there's a plate. At the bottom there's a receptacle. Below yipol tzror oretz. And not one piece will fall to the ground. So there are two interpretations here. Again, both interpretations are correct. One is that none will fall to the ground means that the righteous will survive. None of the righteous will fall through. And those people who are committed to remain Jewish, etc., their commitment will see them through the long exile, and they will retain their Judaism, etc. Others say that the word tzror here refers to the wicked. None of them will fall to the earth, meaning none of them will survive. None of them will eventually... But however we interpret it, the meaning is the same. The exile is a sifting process. Terrible sifting process. In which some survive and some don't. Some remain and some don't. Therefore, you have to just see the statistics that there are approximately as many Jews in the world today as there were almost 2,000 years ago. Our population has not radically changed. So just to put it into perspective, 2,000 years ago there only were about 8 million Chinese. Today there are 1,250,000,000. So if there would be 11 million Jews, so that means that we should also be over a billion people. So first of all, can you imagine a world with 1 billion Jews? There'd be nowhere to hide. But aside from that, that is the price of exile. That's the price of assimilation. That's the price of persecution. Demographically, that's the price. God said, you are the smallest of all people in terms of numbers. We are the smallest, and you can never catch up. Before the Second World War was the high watermark of Jewish population in history, probably. At least since from the time of Mitzrayim. So there were 18 million Jews before the Second World War. It's interesting that since the end of the Second World War till today, the Jewish population has hardly increased in the world. Even though we're talking about 40 years afterwards, when there should have been a natural increase. But the reasons for that are obvious. You have a zero population growth amongst Jewish people. Amongst Jewish people generally, but we are not the Orthodox sector, unfortunately, is still not a major part demographically of the Jewish people. And you have constant defections and assimilation. So those two factors alone impede any growth. B'cherev yamusu kol chatoi ami, the Navi says. The sinners of my people, they will die by the sword. Not that I will kill them. In order for the person to survive, it requires a special protection from heaven. In order for the Jewish people to survive. If that special protection is removed, then all of the natural law of man applies. It all occurs naturally. God doesn't have to do anything. Ha'omrim, those who say now in confidence, Lo sagish v'sagdim ba'adenu hara, nothing evil will happen to us. Lo sagish, it won't come close to us. Sagdim, it won't come to face us. Hara, any evil. Why? Because God will protect us. My bitter joke that I always tell you about the OU, that the first week that I was the head of the OU, so I decided nobody knew me yet, so I was going to go incognito to an OU catered affair. And I would see, how the mashgiach, how it was under control. So I went and I stayed out at the smorgasbord. And I see that the mashgiach is outside. He's at the smorgasbord, he's at the band, he's at the bar, he's there, So I went over to him and I said to him, why aren't you in the kitchen taking care? He said, what's the problem? It's under the OU. That's the attitude, right? God is going to take care of it. I don't have to worry. We don't have to worry about Jerusalem. We don't have to worry about Israel. God's going to take care of us, right? We can do whatever we want. That's the attitude. The evil will not come close to us. It will not touch us. The Navi here is he's too modern, too relevant for us. Very unnerving. Bayom ahu oki mesukas David anofolas. Right, the Jewish people won't be destroyed. On that day, when everything collapses, the little sukkah of David, Hanofolas, that's always falling in, God will preserve it. It will not be destroyed utterly. That's such a phrase the Navi uses, and this is where we take it in benching on sukkahs David Hanofolas. Nofolas is in the present tense. It's falling. It's always falling in, right? It's always collapsing. The Jewish people are always on the verge of collapse. Torah is on the verge of collapse. All the schools are on the verge. It's always falling in. It's always insecure. It's always without foundation. The future is always clouded and frightening. And God supports it. Oki mesukas David hanofolis. So again, our generation is witness to that. Our generation is witness, that there still are Jewish people in the world, and there still is Torah among the Jewish people. And it's an amazing, amazing act. V'godarti es pirtzehen. And God says, I will build a fence around the breaches in their wall. So that even though they think their wall is breached and that they are defenseless, I will erect my fence to save them. V'harisosavakim, and the things that have been destroyed, the legacy of David that has been destroyed, I will establish it again. Uvnisiha kimeolam, and I shall build again the kingdom of David, the Jewish state, the Jewish people. I will rebuild it kimeolam as it was in the olden times, meaning in the times of David and Shlomo, as it was in the heyday when the Jewish people were at their zenith. So the Navi here shifts to the prophecy of hope. Laman Yirshu es Sheris Edom v'chol agoyim asher nikra shmi aleihem. The Jewish people, the Navi says, they will inherit, they will outlive. That's what inherit means. In order to inherit something, you have to outlive the person. Probably the greatest frustration in life is to predecease one's very wealthy uncle. So in order to inherit, one has to outlive them. So God says, you will inherit Edom. You will inherit what's left. Esau, he's running the whole world. It's all going to be yours, Just hang in there. It's all going to be yours. You'll all inherit it. V'chol hagoyim, and everything, all the nations of the world who have so oppressed the Jewish people, you will outlive them all. Because the Jewish people, Asher Nikra Shmi Aleim, because my name is called upon you. You respond to my name. Because my name is called on you and you respond to that. That's the fulfillment of the great verse in the Chumash of V'ro kol amei haaretz ki shem Hashem nikra alecha v'yoru mimeka. That all the nations of the world will see that God's name is called upon you. So the Navi says, that's my promise to you. The Jewish people have lived by that promise all these thousands of years, convinced that it would happen. Nu'um Hashem osezos. This is the word of God, osezos, who does this. So here you have an interesting grammatical use again. Not that God will do it, it's happening already, even though from the time of the Navi it's a long way. But in prophecy we always see things as immediate. It's being done right now. Final 3 verses, glorious. Hine yomim boyim nu'um Hashem, behold, days are coming, God says. You wait. Days of prosperity and goodness. The nigash choresh bakotzer. The plowman will follow hard on the heels of the one who is harvesting. In other words, the harvest will be so great and so long that by the time the harvest is done, they'll be plowing again for the next crop. V'dorech hanovim, and he who tramples on the grapes to make the wine, the Moshe Chazorah, will be hard on the heels of the one that is planting the seeds for the new grapes. That's in the Torah we find that bracha, v'hisig lachem dayish as botzir u'botzir yasig as zorah. The thresher will, when he finishes threshing, will have to go out immediately and gather the fruit. And when he finishes finishing the fruit, then he has to go out and plant immediately. There's such prosperity. You don't know where, you have so many orders, you don't know what to do. When I was in business a long time ago, so we had a tool and die plant, so there was a period of, a metal stamping plant, so there was a period of time that we were tremendously busy because certain companies came out with new products and we were making the parts for them. Webcor was making tape recorders then. We made small parts for them, for Bell and Howell. Like, I remember one summer we were just crazy with work. So we had 3 shifts going, and the place never closed. So even though you're dead tired, and it's a tremendous strain, but you feel a lot better than when the machinery stands empty. Because of the fact that, you see the success. That's what the Navi portrays here. V'hitifu hehori mosis. Again, what a description. The mountains will flow with fruit juice. It'll be so much that it'll flow. V'chol ha'gvo'os tismogagna, and the hills will melt with all of the bounty of the sweet fruit that is growing there, that turns into juice. And that's the bracha, Eretz Zovas Cholav Advosh, a land that flows with milk and honey. It's not that you have to, it just flows with it. Wherever you step, it's there. The fertility of it, the gorgeous beauty of it. V'shavti yeshvus ami Yisrael, I will bring home the captivity of my people Israel. I'll bring them home to their land. Uvonu orim neshamos v'yoshavu, and they will rebuild cities that were desolate for centuries, that nobody ever said anything could be there. V'yoshavu, and they will become settled. V'notu chromim, they will plant again their vineyards. V'shosu es yenam, and they will be able to drink their wine. That's a double bracha. Sometimes people are privileged to plant, but they're not privileged to drink the wine. They're plant the seeds, but not always do we live to see the fruition of our labor. V'yosu ganos, and people will make gardens. V'yochlu es prihem, and they will see the fruits of it, the beauty of it, the wealth of it. Unetati malad mosam, the Navi says. Again, great imagery. Just like the Jewish people plant, God will plant the Jewish people in Eretz Yisrael, not to be uprooted. They're planted in the country. It says in the Torah, Ki odam eitz asodeh. Man is comparable to the trees of the field. We are always compared to it. Right? We're planted, just like trees are planted. They shall no longer be uprooted. But here it's uprooted by force, thrown away. That will not happen anymore to them. Asher nasati lahem, this land that I have given to them will remain their land. Omar Hashem Elokecha, says the Lord your God. So the Navi began the Nevuah with words of sadness and words of prediction of danger and destruction, which unfortunately came true to the fullest iota. There's not one word of exaggeration in Tanakh. That's the great idea that Rabbi Akiva said, that now that I see that the words of punishment have come true fully, so I can appreciate that the words of goodness will also come true fully, without exaggeration. And the Navi concludes with these psukim of hope and of tranquility and of blessing, when the Jewish people realize their purpose and their goal in life and are privileged to all the blessings of the Torah.
This concludes the lecture on the Haftorah of Parshas Kedoshim by Rabbi Beryl Wein. For subscription reservation and further information, please contact the Yeshiva Sha'arei Torah, located at 36